The video is recording, and so I'd like to welcome everybody to our monthly small business webinar. This series kicks off the first Thursday of each month, where we try to bring a speaker in who will have some sort of impact or information for Montana small businesses. My name is Rich Gannon. I'm a small business advisor with the Montana Small Business Development Center. I'm based out of the Great Falls Center. I'd like to thank a few of our sponsors for making this webinar possible. First off, Montana State University Extension Service, the Montana Small Business Development Center, the SBA, and the University of Montana. So today we are going to have Paddy Fleming. He is the director of the Montana Manufacturing Extension Center, and he's going to be talking a little bit about the state of manufacturing in Montana, and also really what the Montana Manufacturing Extension Service is and how they can help small businesses in the state. Feel free to type questions into the chat during the presentation, and then we'll stick around for a few minutes after his presentation's over so we can ask questions of Paddy. When he's done with his presentation, feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions. So with that, I'll turn it over to Paddy. He is sharing his screen, so go ahead, Paddy, and take it away.
Thanks, Rich. The Montana Manufacturing Extension Center's goal is to grow Montana's economy by helping manufacturers succeed. We do that through growth, innovation, and sustainability. And sustainability here, we mean keep them in business. We've been doing this since 1996. Sometimes there's confusion because we use the word extension, so does MSU Extension. We're both out of MSU, but we're under the College of Engineering, and we're not the same organization. So I'll start off with what is manufacturing? And did I switch my slide? No. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm good.
Okay.
I think. There we go. So I think it helps to have a good definition of what is manufacturing. It's not an easy term to define, but here it is. It's when you add value to something physical that was grown, mined, or previously manufactured. So when you think about that, some things that are not manufacturing that you might think is software development, apps, and also home construction is not manufacturing. But some odd things that are logging, newspapers, printing, breweries, distilleries. Those are all manufacturing. So when you think about Montana, we are very good at growing crops, raising livestock, logging, mining, and oil. So those are not manufacturing. What manufacturing is when you take one of those things and you do something to it. So when you think about what we do to all those products, we make bread, vodka, beef jerky, amongst a lot of other things. And those all come out of our ag sector. So that some people call that value-added ag. We call it food and beverage manufacturing. We talk about our logging. We make a lot of forest products in Montana, not just lumber, but furniture, cribbage boards, fly fishing nets, what have you. And that's value-added forestry. And then there's the whole value-added mining. We do a lot of that in Montana. Copper, we machine products, aluminum, steel, computer chips, oil products. So that's the definition of manufacturing. And we try to help them all. So why is manufacturing important in Montana? Well, the University of Montana's Bureau of Business and Economic Research determined and did a study that every job in Montana produces 2.63 jobs in the economy outside of the manufacturing sector. So I like to say that if you consider you built a factory in the middle of nowhere, Prairie County, eventually you're going to need a grocery store there. Eventually you're going to need a hotel. All those jobs are a result of the manufacturing company or the manufacturing jobs that are there. it's a big factor in the economic growth of a region. When we look at the history of manufacturing in Montana and compare it to the nation, it's kind of interesting that Montana's on the left there and the U.S. is on the right. And this is only through 2019. These are U.S. Census Bureau numbers. And some of us on this call are probably old enough to remember shutdowns of lumber mills, shutdowns of foundries, copper processing, aluminum processing. And you'll notice that the blue line is number of manufacturers and the red line is the employees. So, and we are still seeing some lumber mill shutdowns recently, but you would expect big dips there. And it really didn't happen. And you also notice that Montana's been on basically an upward trend since all the way back to our records have is 1978, whereas the U.S. has kind of been on a downward trend. So that's good news for Montana, and I find quite interesting. To me, it says that when the shutdowns and the layoffs did occur, that Montana kind of rallied and said, well, if I don't have a job, I'll start my own business. A lot of it was manufacturing. So here's another chart. The other one was only through 2019. This is up through this year. The number of manufacturers in Montana. You can see since 2017, we have had a huge growth in the number of manufacturers in the state of Montana. It's an 80% growth since 2017. It was a 10% growth in just 2024. Pretty promising numbers. When we look at where are the manufacturers in Montana, here's a map that shows 2024. We had Gallatin County #1 with 800 of them. Unfortunately, we have 2 counties in Montana that have 0 manufacturers, and those are Petroleum and Treasure. I also like to say that there's probably a direct correlation between the economic viability of a county and how many manufacturers they have. So you can see our powerhouses. Actually, 75% of the manufacturers in Montana are in 9 counties. Lots of factors go into that: logistics, transportation, population, so forth. But for Montana's health, I think we should be focusing on getting manufacturers into the counties that do not have many of them. Here's 2025. So this was taken on January 2nd. Flathead County surged to #1. And it wasn't but 4 or 5 years ago that Yellowstone County was #1. Now look at Flathead up there, 903. So quite interesting. Our total number of manufacturers in Montana is 5,586. Now keep in mind on the definition of manufacturing, that's going to include somebody making knives in their garage. That's going to include our printers, our breweries, our distilleries. And then when we look at the percentage of growth in each county since 2017, it's a much better picture. It really shows that there is growth throughout the state. You can maybe look to the right there, Macomb County, 100% growth since 2017. Now that probably meant that they went from 2 manufacturers to 4, but it's at least showing growth in our eastern counties. And when we think about Montana, Montana, we produce massive amounts of commodities, ag commodities and mining commodities. So, or grain, cattle. But we usually ship it off to somebody and let them make the profit out of processing it and manufacturing products out of it. So part of MMEC's goal is to drive the value-added ag growth in Montana, and let's start taking advantage of these raw products that are sitting in our backyard, and rather than send them out of state. There are problems with that. Probably the reason that happens is that we are also not, due to our low population, we are not the center of consumption of those products. So companies have made the decisions over many years to ship the commodity out of here, make the bread in Minneapolis, and then distribute the bread out of Minneapolis to the major consumers of that. So that's part of our issue that we'll always fight in Montana. When we look at manufacturers by NAICS code, that's North American Industrial Classification Code, which is based on what you really start out with. So we still have a large number. Our biggest number of manufacturers in Montana is wood products. So that means all the cribbage boards and fly fishing nets and furniture, so forth. So even though we're seeing losses in the primary sector of the lumber mills, we are still have a lot of people making products out of wood. Metal products has also always been up there. This includes firearms and ammo. We're seeing growth in all those. And then we get into this miscellaneous manufacturing, which really doesn't, it's where it doesn't fit into any of those other categories. So we have a huge number of miscellaneous manufacturers. Machinery and equipment, our photonics companies are often classified in here. They're making equipment. Our applied materials and Kalispell would be put in here. They're making machinery, so forth. And then we get to food and beverage. And that's all our food, breweries, distilleries, wineries, bakeries, on and on. So that's pretty interesting. This is based on the number of manufacturers in the state. If we look at the change from 24 to 25, our biggest growth was in metal products, firearms and ammo. Lots of growth in that industry. Miscellaneous had huge growth. Wood products had growth. And food and beverage has big growth. Down on the bottom are the ones that we lost ground on: musical instruments, paint, coatings, adhesives, and miscellaneous chemicals. And the percent of change, instead, I was looking back before, this previous slide was the number of companies. Now we'll look at the percentage change. And the percentage change in printing is the biggest. So think of all the printing shops you can think of around your community. And animal food products is way up there. So we're talking feed products for livestock here. And miscellaneous manufacturing. Signs is a big growth industry in manufacturing. Not sure how I could explain that, but as a percentage, our two losers are musical instruments and paint, coatings, and adhesives. On the musical instruments, of course, our big player there is Gibson, and they are still doing well. And I didn't want to indicate that there's any problem there. So we try to help all the manufacturers in Montana. We've got a very diversified staff. This map shows where they're located. You can see most of them are located. The blue shaded counties are the 9 counties that hold 75% of the manufacturers in Montana. So that's why they're located there. But we do cover every county. We've got one in Sydney that's also trying to help alleviate the distance issue between Great Falls or Billings and Sydney. All these folks are seasoned professionals. Most of them have an engineering degree with an MBA. Most of them have 20, 30 years of actual manufacturing management experience. For instance, Missoula's Steve Dibdahl used to run a pharmaceutical manufacturing company out of Missoula. Butte's Brian Sullivan used to be top manager at REC Silicon in Butte. Alistair is out of Bozeman, worked with Baxter Pharmaceuticals. Carolyn Kelman in Great Falls, she has worked at both Calumet Refinery and ADF in Great Falls, as well as Volvo Cars. Helena Claude Smith, he has run both Pasta Montana in Great Falls, as well as Montana Eggs. So plenty of experience there, and willing to help any manufacturer in Montana.
Looks like you maybe muted yourself there, Paddy.
Thank you. We do a lot of feasibility studies, partner with other organizations in the state to provide those. We do them on whether somebody wants to start up a meat processing plant, a plywood mill, anything you can think of. We'll do those. Basically, it'll come out with a product that says, here's what we expect from the first 5 years of revenue. Here's all the things that got to be considered. Here's the machinery. Here's the number of employees you're going to have. Here's the size of facility you're going to need. Here's how we'd lay it out. We do a lot of market research for companies. Somebody wants to know what's going on in the brewery industry. Is it something I should continue to invest in, or is the market falling on that? We help with a lot of startups, end up working very closely with SBDC in this. SBDC's abilities to create business plans and find financing are a great match. So we go back and forth with clients on that, and then we'll provide the manufacturing expertise. Do a lot of strategic planning with companies. Where do they want to go, and what are they going to have to do to get there? We try to help them find financing with grants, banking, what have you. We help companies with product development, commercialization, and engineering. We've got our staff members can design products, and we take no intellectual property interest in any of those. So once a company pays us to do that, it's their property. Supply chain and development and optimization is a big part of what we do. Most of you can remember COVID and supply chain issues there. One of the things we try to do is optimize the supply chain and make it so it's not as costly to the company, and also de-risk. So if you've only got one company that can provide you that part, we should be looking for a second company. Of course, we do process efficiencies. We teach manufacturers manufacturing theories such as lean manufacturing, theory of constraints, and Six Sigma. All those are used to reduce the cost of goods in a manufacturer, which also helps with cash flow, profitability, and ability to expand. Quality management systems, oftentimes these are required by our manufacturers' customers. Boeing, for instance, you cannot supply to Boeing unless you become AS9100 certified. So we do that for companies. We also help them with technology implementation. They want to put in a new automatic stacker so their employees are not stacking 50-pound bags all day long on pallets. We do a lot of worker safety. Claude in Great Falls is a food safety expert, known nationwide. Environmental compliance, and we help with energy use reduction. We're Workforce development's a big issue today and will be for the foreseeable future. Some of the things that we do there is we will help train their frontline workers on various technical issues. We'll help companies develop a training program so that they have a way to get their employees moved up the career ladder. We teach companies supervisory skills, leadership development. We help with set up internships within companies. We also set up apprenticeships within companies. We're partnered with the Montana Department of Labor and Industry and are a sponsor for apprenticeships. So basically what that means is we do all the paperwork to develop an apprenticeship, and we implement it into the company, and we do all the paperwork. So it really takes the risk off the company so they can start to see the benefits of that without being scared away by the paperwork. Do a lot of managerial accounting. Most of our companies we find focus on tax accounting. Of course, the objective there is to minimize your taxes, whereas managerial accounting, we focus on cash flow, profit margin, and so forth. We do a lot of cybersecurity compliance with clients. CMMC, you may or may not have heard of, is now required by Department of Defense suppliers. So we have several companies in Montana that are going to have to get certified to this in order to maintain their business with the Department of Defense. And we help them do that. We help with exporting and importing. We also help companies get their product into the Department of Defense. And we also do business valuation and transition assistance. So we can come in and value a company, and then we can help them find buyers or help them convert to an ESOP or help them convert to a co-op, whatever is the desire of the company owner. So that's all that. Sorry to bore you with that. I'll talk about kind of the challenges and the trends we're seeing in Montana right now. I think we can all agree that transportation is always going to be an issue in Montana. We are in a vast geography, and it just costs more to get product in and out of Montana. If I was going to start up a new manufacturing company in Montana, I would try to use some product, some commodity that we grow or mine in Montana, so that I wouldn't be hit with the transportation costs of bringing product in. When you look at companies like Applied Materials in Kalispell, they're making a piece of machinery that's used in chip manufacturing. Shipping cost, that piece of machinery might be $5 million. So the shipping cost as a percentage of the sale is minimal. It really doesn't matter where it's being shipped from. Now, when we're producing something that everybody wants or needs, like T-shirts or something, we're going to have a problem being competitive in that industry because we're going to have to ship it to where all the buyers are. And our competitors are probably located closer to where the buyers are. So that's something that we're always going to deal with. Our supply chain risk in Montana is high. When we talk to our clients in Montana, they feel like it's okay right now because everything's working. Of course, they all remember COVID and the panic that occurred there. One of the things we try to help them do is let's de-risk that. Let's have a backup supplier in place in case something happens with your supplier. And one of the things with supply chain too is most companies do not focus on who's your supplier's supplier, because that can derail you just as fast. Is your supplier is doing fine, but they can't get some ingredient they need. And I think we've talked about this, but workforce shortages are expected for many years to come in Montana and the U.S. This is not a Montana-only problem. And we saw in just in 2024, Montana manufacturers raised their wages by an average of $8,000 per year. And that is in response to trying to get any employee, let alone qualified employees. There's lots of things we can do to minimize that pain, but it will always be there and it will always be an issue. Our Montana manufacturers are behind in terms of automation. And when we speak of automation, a forklift is automation because you now have a way to lift heavy things without 20 men. But we still have companies in Montana that are expecting employees to stack 50-pound bags of product on pallets all day long outside. In today's economy, it's going to be really tough to find somebody that's going to do that for a long-term period. So way behind in that type of automation, let alone really high-end automation. We're behind in basic automation, and that has to be addressed in Montana for them to be successful and compete with their competitors. Our food and beverage industry is growing in Montana, and it's growing nationwide. So I think that's something we all need to focus on. That's also known as value-added ag. Again, we talked about if you could take a raw product that you have easily available in Montana, make a product out of it, sell it to out-of-staters, that's the way to go. Obviously, your incoming transportation costs are very low. We got lots of examples in Montana of success in that. Wheat Montana is one of them. Pasta Montana is another. List goes on and on those. Firearms, ammo, and DoD business is growing. The state of Montana has been recruiting a lot of these. Montana's perceived as a very friendly state when it comes to regulations on these type of things. And so that continues to grow. And of course, our photonics and quantum industry is growing. If anybody on here is wondering what photonics is, that's when you take optics and lasers and use them together. A couple examples: Aurora here in Bozeman has designs and manufactures LiDAR for automated cars. What's the word I'm thinking of? But in trucks. So your driver assisted or driverless vehicles. We have another company here in Bozeman that uses photonics to search pipelines and old abandoned wells for methane detection. So with the lasers and the optics, they're able to pick up things that the eye can't see. And that's a growing industry and will continue to be. And there's been big investment from the federal government into Montana to help grow this industry. The opportunities for the existing companies in Montana is to be a supplier to these industries. Each one of this industry is going to need machined parts and printed circuit boards. So we need to grow those companies in Montana so they can supply the photonics and quantum industry. Also, when we go back to firearms, a big issue for firearms is a process called anodizing, and we are woefully short on anodizers in the state of Montana. Most of our companies in Montana are shipping their metal products out of state to become anodized. It's a coating that goes on, and then paying to ship it back. So they could be much more competitive if we had an anodizer in state. I already hit on this. We've got vast natural resources that are not being processed or manufactured in Montana. That's our biggest opportunity for manufacturing. So some of the possible solutions I'm going to focus on two because I can pretty much guarantee you that every manufacturer in Montana is lists these two as their top 10 major issues. Workforce, number one. So how can companies fix their workforce issue? Well, first of all, becoming more efficient. If I can produce 20% more product with my same employees, I'm ahead of the game there. That means that I don't have to hire new employees to do this, and I can still expand and grow my business. Cross training. We talked about stacking 50-pound bags. There's another issue too, is that one person leaves, they've got all the knowledge, and we're trying to hire somebody without any experience. So if we can cross train our employees so that not only are they stuck stacking the 50-pound bags all day long, but they could be doing some of the other things and fill in for their fellow workers. We push this a lot to automate unpleasant tasks. I want to clarify here that in no way are we trying to push reduction in workforce. We are trying to push taking a job which consists of many tasks in a day. And let's take some of those really unpleasant things that the employee hates doing all day long and take that off and automate it. And then we can let them focus on producing more product without doing the unpleasant tasks of cleaning this or measuring that. Higher pay helps keep employees, and we saw that last year. But to do that, companies got to be more efficient. They've got to have the cash flow in order to fund a higher pay. So we push that a lot. The old days, 10, 15 years ago, Montana employers used to jokingly say, well, they're paying the high, sure, I'm not paying them much, but they're kind of paying the scenery tax. Well, with our housing and childcare issue, that just isn't cutting it anymore. People aren't willing to pay the scenery tax. Career ladders. We're noticing in today's workers that they want a good idea of if I start out at your company stacking the 50-pound bags, tell me approximately how long it's going to take me to increase my pay and move up to a new job. And what's the pay? How long is it going to take me? In the old days, we used to just say, get out there and start stacking bags, and we'll let you know if you ever get to move on. I think there's a lot of opportunity for companies, manufacturers to partner with the high schools and higher ed. Get them to start crafting their classes that might help you. There's a program in Montana now called the Teacher Externship Program, where a company can have a high school teacher come in and work in the plant for 3 days in the summer. This then gives the teacher an idea that there are good jobs down the street, and I could speak to my students about that. Internships and work-based learning. Internships are a great way for a company and an employee to try out each other, see if they like each other. In Montana, we hear often that the brain drain, we're taking our employees out of Montana, shipping them off out of state. When you talk about like engineers coming out of Montana State, oftentimes they have no idea what job opportunities are available to them in Montana. If you were to get that person as an intern, have them work for the summer, they may well decide they want to stay in Montana rather than go get the job in Seattle. Apprenticeships. This is really becoming winning solution for many of our manufacturers. In fact, I'll speak to one. It is American Chem in East Helena. Now, just due to that industry, they're basically working in unheated area. They are, it's pretty dusty with copper dust in there. And it's hard work. But they have implemented an apprenticeship program that has reduced their turnover rate by 50%. And when we talk about turnover, it's the costs for a turnover of an employee are usually a minimum of 50% of their annual salary. So if you're paying somebody $50,000 a year and you got to replace them, your internal cost to get that employee replaced is probably $25,000. So huge beneficial to the business to reduce their turnover. Here's one that I think is highly important is in-house childcare. I'm sure many of you know that that's one of the biggest issues in Montana, and a lot of organizations are working on it, but companies are now looking to do this in-house as a perk for their employees. We have one company in Bozeman that has done this. The shocking numbers are that for each child that they provide in-house childcare for, it costs the company $24,000 per year per child. So it's not insignificant. But if you want to stay competitive with your keeping and getting good employees, this is a decision that one company in Bozeman made to try to make sure they can keep their employees. And of course, housing. Housing is one of our biggest issues that affects our workforce. The incredible climb of housing costs in Montana has caused some companies to actually do housing allowances. There's another model too where the company will build their own housing, rent it back to the employees. This, of course, is the old model from coal mines and so forth. But given the situation, that's what some companies are considering or are doing. One company I know of that is basically giving them a $50,000 signing bonus to use as a down payment. Now, if the employee quits in 2 years or doesn't buy a house, they have to pay the $50,000 back. So I'm sure there's a lot more creative solutions to those two issues than I can speak to, but it is a possible solution in the fight to obtain and retain good quality employees. The next biggest issue that we hinted on this is supply chain. There's lots of things that can be done on that. You can map your supply chain, including your lower tiers. I talked about how you may be very comfortable with the printed circuit board manufacturer that's supplying you, but are you comfortable with the supplier of the resistors to your supplier? Do you even know where they come from? So that can derail you just as quick. So mapping all that out, it's a big task, is an eye-opener to most companies. Another way is to calculate the cost of ownership with each supplier. This is a well-used method within managerial manufacturing where you take into account, if I'm buying the container load of products from overseas that are 10%, 20% cheaper than I get in the US, there's still some cost there. I have to buy a container load at a time. That might be 3 years supply. I've got to have a place to store it. When that container comes over, if there's problems with it, with the quality, I've got to send it back. Then I've got to wait for them to send me another one. So those are all numbers that you throw into the cost of ownership. And then it's an easier way to look at your suppliers and decide, is this really a good deal? It looks good initially because it's 20% cheaper, but with all these other factors, maybe it isn't that good of a deal. Holding suppliers accountable. Most of our small companies do not have the time or resources to hold their suppliers accountable. They'll talk about, oh, they're pretty good, but last 2 shipments had big quality issues. We can teach them how to implement systems that will hold their suppliers accountable, but also partner with their suppliers. And partnering with the suppliers, there are a lot of companies in the world that have done this very successfully, where you work side by side with your supplier. If one of you comes up with an idea that saves costs for both of you, you share the profit in that. Maybe my price goes down a little bit, maybe their price goes up a little bit. But it's a way to work together to achieve a common goal. Look for opportunities to reduce shipping costs. Shipping costs are a big issue in Montana. So could we duplicate suppliers? Could we partner with our colleagues in the state? We right now are trying to develop a metals buying group. If you figure we've got 20 trucks, each with less than a truckload, LTL, coming into the state of Montana every week with metal shipments. As a state, we're paying too high of a cost. If we get a bunch of them together, and let's agree that we'll all buy from the same supplier, and we'll have 3 truckloads a day or a week instead of 20 half loads. Buying groups, shipping groups, same thing. When I had a small manufacturer in Montana, he was in the alcohol industry. To get glass, came off the Washington coast, but shipping was free if you took a truckload. Well, a truckload is 3 years supply for me, and so I got to have a place to store three years worth of bottles in order to get the free shipping. And of course, the free shipping sounded really nice, but there's often ways you can find your colleague down the street that's also bringing in something from the coast on an LTL, and boy, he's always got room for 2 pallets on the back. What if I paid them to haul my glass 2 pallets at a time? So with that, I'd like to open up to questions. Anybody have any questions for me?
Yeah, I got a couple questions, Paddy, while people think of theirs. First thing, I was just curious about your statistics in growth of manufacturing in Montana. I know you said something about kind of, well, I'll start my own business, but are there some other trends or some other, what do you attribute that remarkable growth rate to in manufacturing in the state?
Well, the first was COVID. So a lot of people moved here and brought their businesses. In my opinion, we're attracting a lot of these small manufacturers that are realizing that they, as well as their employees, would enjoy a nice place to live with a good quality of life. And therefore, let's go to Montana. It's wide open. Everybody can enjoy the outdoors, and we'll make money at the same time.
And then how do you source that aggregate data, like number of manufacturers per county? Is that stuff publicly accessible? Like, is there some database with the state or something that, someone could actually go and search people listed as manufacturer per county and find names of these businesses?
So I obtained mine off of Dun and Bradstreet.
Okay.
I believe you have to pay to be a part of it. I download all the Montana manufacturers into a spreadsheet every year. That's where I gain my data. I am happy to share that spreadsheet with anybody. Let you use it as you see fit.
Sure. Okay. That'd be great. And then one final question. I'll let someone else unmute. But your services are fee for service. But could you describe a little bit? I mean, is there I know it's probably hard to say what your average fee is, and then I know you guys also will work with businesses to get your fee paid through some other methods. Could you kind of describe some of that process?
Sure. So MMEC is funded with a three-legged stool. We get some funding from the Federal National Institute of Standards and Technology. So there's a center like ours in every state. It requires a 2-to-1 match, meaning if we spend $3, they'll send us $1 back. State of Montana gives us some money as part of that match, and we have to charge for our services. Some caveats there. We cannot work with a company that has more than 500 employees in one location. That's the definition of small business, 500 employees or less. In Montana, we have none that are over 500 in one location. But we also, Boeing does not need us in Helena. The company that preceded Boeing, Summit Aviation, was a very strong client of ours. Once they become acquired by a large corporation, they have enough resources corporate-wide. They don't need us. So we have to charge for our services. Our services are, when we constantly look at the marketplace, we're at about half of what the market would charge for those services. But keep in mind, if you are a consultant to manufacturers, you would not work with companies that have less than 500 employees. It just wouldn't be feasible. So our fees are range. We do adjust for smaller versus larger, but on average about $1,500 per day. And we also provide guarantees on that work. We also survey the client afterwards to obtain how much money did you save because MMEC helped you. And we have 24 years of data that show the average return on investment for a manufacturer working with MMEC is about 20-1. So for every dollar they invest in us with our fees, it's about, they'll gain $20 back in their business.
Great, thank you. Any other questions for Paddy out there? Well, that's a few seconds of awkward silence, so I'll assume there aren't any, and then this recording will be posted on the MSU website. A copy of Paddy's slide deck will be there as well. If you have any questions, certainly reach out to me. I can in contact with him, or he's got his contact info right there as well. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and I'd like to just kind of announce our next webinar is March 6th, Thursday, March 6th, and it's going to be Jill Colas. She is with Great Falls Development Alliance, and she's going to be talking about bridge financing and the importance that bridge financing plays in the lending. We do have one question that came through the chat. Daniel, if you can, he says you can't unmute yourself, but if you want to type it in the chat, I can certainly read it to Paddy if you got a second. If you're still there, Daniel. Yeah, well, we'll give him a second here. He's not allowing to unmute. If you want to, he's going to type his question if you want to hang out for just 1 minute longer, Paddy.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay, Daniel's question is, are Montana manufacturers looking to hire automation engineers or need consulting services or have consulting services for specific needs?
So we do have one full-time person that does automation for us, located out of Sydney. But whenever we know of a resource within the state of Montana, we'd love to partner with them and see if we can provide them work if possible. So please don't hesitate to contact me regarding that.
Great. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, thanks for sending that in, Daniel. If there's no other questions, we'll sign out and hopefully we'll catch you next Thursday again for our presentation. Again, it's going to be on gap financing. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.